You deserve to know more.
eNCA.com.
Well, let's discuss the ongoing crisis surrounding Ebola in West Africa and some of the scares in Central Africa. I'm joined on the line by Lucille Blumberg. She's the Deputy Director at the National Institute for Communicable Diseases. Lucille, good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for your time. How concerned are you guys now considering the spread that we've seen in West Africa?
Well, I think the outbreak remains essentially confined in terms of community transmission in the three countries, Sierra Leone, Guinea and Liberia. Nigeria, the cases are limited to healthcare workers who were exposed to the patient who came from Liberia. So there's no community transmission.
There's always so much concern when it comes to Ebola, isn't there, Lucille, about people who have a high temperature suddenly being suspected of Ebola. Is that a fair way of looking at it, or are there other signs that you look for apart from a high temperature?
You know, I think one would want to look at where they've been and what sort of contact they've had. So we have a lot of people who travel in Africa, including West Africa, and perhaps the most important cause of fever and the commonest we've found in returning travelers is malaria. So I think you want to ask, what sort of contact have you had with Ebola patients, and it's that handling of body, blood, or tissues that would suggest that perhaps it's not malaria and something else. It's not just casual contact or just being there.
As far as our reaction, Lucille, goes with a few of the country's airports, the top 5 airports, if you will, now putting in extra measures. We know SAA, their flights are continuing across to West Africa. Are you happy with the way that our government is handling, it's not a crisis here, obviously, but the way they're handling this Ebola epidemic?
Yes, I think there's been a very active response. There's a lot going on. I think we remain at low risk, but nevertheless, it's important that measures are in place. And I think many of them are working very well. I think the most important one is that health workers, doctors, nurses who are working in health facilities are able to consider Ebola, have a high risk of Ebola in travellers from those areas with unexplained fever. And I think the system has worked very well up to now.
Yeah, give me your take on this trial medicine that a few people over in West Africa are getting. I think it's pronounced ZMapp. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Lucille, the ZMapp or ZMapp that's being sent over. Is this just pie in the sky, or what do we know about it?
No,
I
think there are some studies in animal studies, but quite small studies, to suggest a good outcome. It's really too early and to really comment on its efficacy or how well it will work in patients with Ebola. There were only 3 patients, human patients, who've had the benefit of it, 2 of whom did get better, but, it's not clear if it was due to ZMapp or just other interventions, more supportive treatment.
Lucille, thank you very much indeed for your time. I'm sure we'll speak again. Lucille Blumberg is the Deputy Director at the National Institute for Communicable Diseases.
You deserve to know more.
eNCA.com.